Streaming services won, and it's worse than you think. Video by Matty Balls. Streaming services won. We covered this topic before, I believe, in a reaction earlier this year. But you already know what it is, chat. He said it's worse than we thought. How did it get worse?
Man, we all know that these streaming services just want you to keep paying for their service. So, let's find out what they're gonna say in this video.
Subscription model that accompanies them have quietly been taking over our lives. From the music we listen to the TV we watch, to the games we play, and even to the cars we drive. I don't think I need to go into detail for you guys to think about how all of these little subscription fees we are paying for this, that, and the third is slowly adding up over time to a number that isn't so small. I think we can—
Oh man, talk about subscription, bro. You know what I'm saying? They don't talk too much about the expense of being a YouTuber. Adobe's hitting us on it. God damn.
We can all agree that both streaming services and subscription services have gotten a little bit out of hand. But this is a new problem. Especially before the digital age, this wasn't really an issue. When you bought something, you owned it. You weren't renting everything out to the point where if you missed a payment 1 month, it no longer belonged to you. So how did we get here? To the point where a lot of what we consume, especially entertainment, we don't actually own. How did streaming services become so dominant? And how did we let the subscription model become the primary payment model for many things? Well, first, I think it's a little important to understand
Man, I know. Y'all gonna say, man, you pausing early in the video, bro. We've been through this so many times, bro. We know these companies don't give a fuck about us. Give a fuck about you, your grandma, your daddy, your mama, your sister, your children. They don't care. All of you are just another penny in the bucket so that they can keep the business afloat. It is what it is.
Facts.
a lot of the problems that come with streaming services. There's probably no area where streaming has become more dominant than in music. It's estimated that 289 million Americans use music streaming services, or about 85% of the US population. And of course, among younger Americans, the numbers are much higher. In a lot of ways, I think this has been a good thing. Music is more accessible now than ever before, and you have every single song pretty much ever made at your fingertips, wherever you go. And for the most part, it's free. If you don't want ads though, it'll only be about $10 a month. If you compare that to like the 60s, where a single record costs about $3, a record player might be like $45, and speakers would be around $50, it's a pretty big difference. And it may sound affordable, but adjusted for inflation, a single album whose songs you weren't even guaranteed to enjoy, every single one, would cost about $35. And the equipment needed to enjoy it would be much more. So yeah, it's definitely cheaper to pay $10 a month than it is to buy a $35 record for every album you like. As a result, the average American today spends more than 20 hours a week listening to music, which is more than ever before. In the 60s, by contrast, the average American bought fewer than 2 new records a year. So the positives of music being affordable and accessible are very clear, but there are a lot of people who think it's also gone a bit too far. It may be easier than ever before to listen to music, but in some ways it's also becoming harder to make a living from it. Music streaming services are so cheap because the payouts to artists are so small. Once the music labels have their cut taken out, Spotify, for example, only pays artists around 1/10 of a cent per stream. With physical record sales, however, on a major label, the artist will often make as much as 30% of the sale. So if I were to buy a copy of Clips's recent album Let God Sort 'Em Out on vinyl for $25, the band would probably make about $7. For them to make that same amount of money on streaming, or Spotify in particular, I would have to listen to their song about 7,000 times, or the equivalent of listening to their songs 24/7 for about 2 weeks. Of course, I don't have access to the recording contract, so I couldn't tell you the exact numbers, but that's roughly how it works. In the past, plenty of musicians have entirely withdrawn their music from streaming services in protest of these pay rates. Taylor Swift boycotted in 2014, while the Beatles were entirely absent from streaming services for almost a decade. But obviously, most artists who leave always end up returning because music streaming services are so dominant. If you don't put your music up on Spotify and Apple Music and all that, you're pretty much killing your career. The dominance has completely changed the economics of the music industry.
That's true.
Before streaming, musicians made the vast majority of their money from record sales. That meant musicians like the Beatles could go without touring for years at a time, solely to focus on making their music. It also meant if you had a few classic albums or songs that people were always going to be listening to, you were pretty much set for life. But nowadays, that's not quite the case. Most artists nowadays are making the majority of their money from tours, which is one of the main reasons concert tickets seem to be so expensive these days. Artists are also increasingly relying on merchandise, advertising, and other ways of cashing in on their fame, which is probably why it feels like every single musician is trying to sell you something. From regular things like clothing and merch to weird stuff like Rick Ross branded ceramic car spray, or in Drake's case, extremely sketchy gambling websites. But the streaming industry hasn't only hurt artists' pockets. Many people believe that it's actually hurt the quality of the music as well. You've probably noticed that since like the mid 2010s, the music topping the charts has been a little bit more boring. Imagine Dragons, Maroon 5, Ed Sheeran. Commercially, these artists were equivalent of the Beatles, Eminem, or Queen in their respective eras, but their music is obviously not quite as good. Except maybe Maroon 5, I don't know, man, they had some bangers. I've talked about this extensively in recent videos, so I won't go too far into detail, but just know that the systems that streaming services have in place encourage music that just simply isn't quite as good. Most artists and their record labels in particular are aware of this system, so musicians are incentivized to create music that won't be too complicated or overwhelming on the first listen. What streaming platforms are encouraging are bland, unoriginal songs that can blend into a background playlist in a way that makes you want to leave it on.
The other way that bands and music fans lost is that because streaming is more or less free, you have access to everything. There's just but significantly less focus on actually listening to and loving music. If you can listen to anything you want all of the time for free, if something is uninteresting to you after 3 seconds, you don't give it any attention. Music, interesting, in-depth, curious, challenging music takes time to focus on. Music has definitely not gotten better, and I'm saying this as a music fan since I was a child, since streaming happened. Streaming doesn't make music better. Streaming makes music it makes music have to be a commercial in order for it to potentially grab somebody's attention.
It's also hard not to think that Spotify is devaluing music with some of the statements that their CEO, Daniel Ek, has made. He's claimed that the cost of creating music now is close to zero, and he also said it's not enough for musicians to release albums only every 4 or 5 years. He's also blamed labels when Spotify themselves are one of the lowest paying streaming services.
Many people still think Spotify doesn't pay the artists. Who should they direct their inquiries to, if not to you at Spotify?
Yeah, well, technically it is true that we don't pay artists directly. So what we do is we pay all the rights holders. So we pay the record labels, record labels, but also the music publishers.
And I think there's one other major problem when it comes to music streaming services in particular, and it's the fact that you don't actually own any of the music. For example, if Spotify wanted to change the music, they could. Let's say you really enjoyed the original mix of The Life of Pablo by Kanye. Well, that's unfortunate because it's no longer available on a single streaming platform. Even
Fuck. Nigga, so now I can't even enjoy my goddamn music the way I wanted to, bro. Yeah, this is why the golden era, bro, was the goddamn MP3. Telling you, bro.
Yeah.
worse, in my opinion, Spotify or other services could just remove the music if they don't want it on there. For example, in 2017, Spotify removed all of XXXTentacion's music from their playlist and recommendation features because it supposedly violated their guidelines on hateful content. It was only after Kendrick Lamar threatened to remove his entire catalog that this policy was abandoned. Although even then, other controversial artists like Tay-K, for example, remained in the same situation. And I'm sure there's more examples of Spotify just straight up taking music off of the platform. But I think the most egregious example I can think of is their release of the car thing. If you bought the $90 Spotify car thing, you would get a small touchscreen tablet designed to be plugged into your car's dashboard, allowing you to control Spotify and play music in your car. Which, of course, if you didn't have one of those built-in things on your car, I don't know, I have an old car, but if you didn't have that built in, this would be very helpful. The car thing, though, was a huge flop, losing the company $31 million. So, less than 3 years after being officially released, the car thing's functionality and software support was ended completely, rendering it useless. This still blows my mind to this day, but Spotify somehow had the power and got away with completely bricking and disabling something that many people had bought for $90. $90. Imagine you bought something for
Oh,
$90 and then it was
And
just
it's
ripped
useless.
away from you. Like I feel like that's just a scam. It's to the point where if you actually even do own something, it doesn't matter because companies can still take it from you. And while I am primarily a music channel and I can acknowledge that streaming services have caused a lot of problems for the music industry, I think that both streaming and subscription services are a bit worse in other industries, particularly when it comes to TV. It may be true that Americans use streaming for music more, but it's not by much. In fact, it's actually estimated that about 83% of Americans use streaming for TV, which is just 2% less than those who use it for music. While Spotify and music services helped popularize the subscription service model, platforms like Netflix were some of its pioneers. Netflix used to be a mail-to-home service, which basically meant they were like a Blockbuster that mailed you your DVDs. By the way, rest in peace to Blockbuster. But basically, you'd pay this monthly fee, you'd get discs in the mail, and then when you returned them, you could get new ones. And then Redbox came around and was crushing it for a while. Not sure if you guys remember Redbox, but that was gas, especially when they added video games. Era. But I digress.
Bro, Redbox was the shit. Although sometimes I ain't gonna lie, I had a few of them games. It's already too late, bro. They can't come for me. You know what I'm saying?
What's the deal with they gave?
What? It be something, you know what I'm saying? Not all the time. But sometimes you get a good game that, you know, you can hardly get your hands on. You're like, shit.
Nah.
Never see this one again.
Then as websites like YouTube began to take off, Netflix realized they could start streaming shows. This made it so that customers could watch any title, anywhere, anytime. Something that you couldn't do with regular cable
I actually kind of lost my shit. Sometimes I lost my
somehow brought it with you. Because a lot of you may not even remember this, but back in the day, they used to have like a broadcast schedule and things would air live. I mean, it still does, but no one really watches cable anymore. But even then, a lot of streaming services offer these pricey bundles to watch sports live. Regardless, Netflix was so much better and convenient that it quickly began to dominate the entertainment industry. Back then, Netflix had a lot of great shows you could watch without too much competition. But now, since there are so many streaming services in the TV industry, they are buying the rights
I don't
to
think FX
shows,
is gonna
movies,
die.
and franchises.
Channels
So
like
if you like a
FX.
variety of shows and movies, there's a good chance you will need to have subscriptions to a variety of services, which is honestly at the point where you're going to end up paying more than you would have for cable. You got Netflix, Hulu, Paramount, Disney Plus, Max, Crunchyroll. There are so many streaming services that are each slowly siphoning your money. I'm sure all of us have had some sort of experience where a new show comes out, you're excited to watch it, you Google where to watch it, and it's on this brand new streaming service you've never.
Yeah, and that's why Fire Sticks became popular, bro. Because, you know, who wants to pay for all of these apps and programs, bro? You just want to be able to stream whatever you want, when you want, without having to break your pockets.
Heard of, or it's on the one that you don't have, which is extremely frustrating. Apart from this making things expensive, it also gets rid of the security of ownership. If I bought Netflix a few years ago to watch The Office, that sucks because now it's on a different service. Even worse than that, if there's a show or movie you like, it can just be taken off of the streaming services and you will have no other way of watching it. For example, over the course of this next year, Netflix is getting rid of over 100 of their original series, which means you will either have to get a new subscription to watch them, or maybe they're just getting rid of them. I'm not even sure. Another example, and unfortunately this is the only one I can think of, but recently I just watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and I learned that there's a couple episodes that they don't have on streaming, but because I watched them on a different thing, I could watch them. But yeah, they banned these from streaming, and there's really no way to watch them unless you want to pirate it. Another problem that comes up with TV streaming services is very similar to the music ones, and it's that they are actually making TV worse. As I mentioned earlier, Spotify and other streaming services prioritize inoffensive, bland songs that have a lower chance of being skipped in a playlist. And they also like songs that people can comfortably listen to in the background, which, unbeknownst to me, these streaming services are attempting a similar thing. In a very similar sense, TV streaming services are expecting you not to fully be paying attention to the shows that you're watching, instead expecting you to be on your phone and maybe only half watching.
She'd heard from so many showrunners who are given notes by the streaming channels that they say, this isn't second screen enough. The viewer is expected to be on their phone, kind of half doing something else while your crime drama or whatever is playing. And you just can't make it as complicated as you have because they're not going to understand it because they're only going to be half concentrating on your show.
This is funny to me because it's a pet peeve of mine when I'm watching a show with someone and they're on their phone. It's like, I don't know, I'm just so locked in on it. But I guess guess a lot of people do this. And this may explain why a lot of shows, especially shows that might be Netflix originals or shows produced by the streaming provider, might be a bit lackluster. They're also stretching out the releases of shows so that your subscription has to renew rather than posting it all at once like they may have before. And probably the worst offense that these streaming services have committed is raise the prices a bunch. After COVID, a lot more people were home and watching TV, so not only did the streaming services crack down on password sharing, but they also realized they could raise prices and there wasn't much people could do about it. Disney Plus was launched at $6.99 per month with no ads, and now its ad-free version is $18.99. Hulu launched at $8
I don't watch TV like that,
now
man.
Its new tier with ads is $11.99, not to mention their super expensive live TV tier. Netflix launched at $7.99, and now it's
I can't even stop thinking about that one part that they said about the being on your phone while the movie playing, bro. Because I think these phone services and like social media and all that, they made us have a shorter attention span. You ain't never like just be randomly talking to somebody and then they just pull out their phone and just go to scrolling. I know I do that sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, bro, the attention span is getting shorter and shorter, bro, because of the phones, man. We gotta put these phones down, bro. They brainwashing us.
Premium option is $24.49 a month. Apple TV launched at only $4.99 a month, which is surprising, and now it is $12.99. And most of the other services follow a similar trend. I don't think I need to go into much detail about this. I'm sure most of you are familiar, or at least somewhat aware of how frustrating these services can be. And believe it or not, it's not just music and TV where streaming and subscription services are making our lives more difficult. Now, streaming is one thing, but this model of digital products switching to subscription services has gotten kind of bad, to put it simply. On average, Americans are spending $273 a month on subscription services. Of course, a large chunk of those costs are coming from TV and music streaming services, but there are many other areas of our lives that the digital subscription service model is creeping in. Subscription services have actually been around for a long time. You actually used to be able to sort of subscribe to the milkman and he'd drop off milk at your house, and once you stopped paying him, he would just take you off his route. But when it comes to the rise of subscription services and digital products, this is a lot newer. Companies like Netflix and Spotify were instrumental in influencing this new wave of digital products that require subscriptions, and now it's beginning to reach far beyond just TV and music. One of the few things I remember from college is a term called forced scarcity. Artificial scarcity essentially describes situations where the producers or owners of a good restrict its availability to others beyond what is strictly necessary. And a perfect example of this is Adobe software. As a YouTuber, I regularly use software from Adobe such as Pro to edit videos or Photoshop for thumbnails. And back in the day, you could have bought both of these programs for around $500 total. I didn't have money like that back then, unfortunately. So nowadays, to access Adobe software, you can no longer buy it outright. Even though it's totally possible for you to keep the software once you buy it, Adobe decided to switch to a subscription service that cost me about $50 a month to own their programs. After just 10 months at this price, I will have effectively bought the programs outright, but I can't, so instead I've been paying $50 a month for years, which over the lifespan of my channel would be like outright, but to own their programs. After just 10 months at this price, I will have effectively bought the programs outright, but I can't, so instead I've been paying $50 a month for years, which over the lifespan of my channel would be like $3,000. Adobe in particular is actually so slimy and greedy that they got sued by the FTC, but that's a whole nother story. Subscriptions are getting so crazy to the point where you got to pay $100 a month to get autopilot in a Tesla, an option they have available if you don't want to buy it outright. And a lot of these subscription services make it very difficult to cancel, to the point where the FTC proposed a rule revision called click to cancel, with the whole goal being to make it easier to cancel subscription services. The lobbyists for these companies said that this rule would cost businesses $2.7 billion, which is crazy to think about the fact that they basically admitted to making $2.7 billion off of people who aren't able to cancel their subscriptions but likely aren't using them. And it makes sense. When I tried to cancel one Adobe subscription, I found out that they signed me up for an annual plan billed monthly, so they charged me for like $300 for the rest of the year. And in a rare moment, I was so upset that I called and got it refunded, and I think they refunded it because the FTC
is this video almost done?
Ridiculous. I've actually had a similar concern with Xbox Game Pass as well. As consoles are releasing without disc drives and video games are going fully digital, it almost feels like gaming could be moving in a similar direction as streaming services. The Xbox Game Pass is another subscription service with different tiers ranging from $10 to $30 a month. It's a similar situation where if you game a lot, sure, it makes sense to get it, especially if you're playing a wide variety of games. But for most people, it'll probably just end up costing them more in the long run than if they just bought the games outright. Now, I don't think this is a big problem now, and I'm sure gamers won't ever let it get as bad as TV streaming services, but just imagine a world where Nintendo, PlayStation, Steam, and Xbox all started buying up exclusive titles and putting them on their own passes. With no disc drives and no options to buy games outright, this could very well be the direction in which games go. I don't know if that's possible, but I mean, that could be a thing. I don't know. It's always worried me. But these are just a few random areas I can see these streaming services and subscription services creeping into our lives in possibly uncomfortable ways, which has left a lot of consumers doing something.
I saw this clip earlier, man, where it was talking about how the PlayStation 6 is gonna be for the rich.
Yeah.
And they're weeding out the poor, that you'll only be playing last gen consoles.
Yeah.
You feel me? And Sony doesn't care, because it's like, but why worry about poor people who can't afford it when we can just cater to the rich people who gonna keep spending? You feel me?
The saddest part is the lower class, that's who's keeping them afloat.
Facts. Anyways, man, y'all already know. Made it to the end of this video. So y'all, great for y'all, man. If y'all want to finish it up, y'all already know. Link is in the description. We'll catch y'all in the next one. We out.